once again, welcome to these three amazing stars that we're going to be talking to. I guess the first thing, a little audience research here. How many of you have already seen this production of Ragtime? Raise your hand. This production. Okay. How many of you have seen a production of Ragtime? All right. How many of you are planning on coming to see this production of Ragtime?
There we go.
All right.
Yeah.
And just out of curiosity, how many of you have read E.L. Doctorow's novel, Ragtime? Okay. Okay. I think of this show as a kind of American opera in the most wonderful sense of that word. It strikes me as a particularly American story, and it is told so remarkably well through music and through visual storytelling, even more so than dialogue. So there is something very operatic and grand and large about this show and its scope. And yet, it is also the very personal story of certain characters. And three of those characters are here right now: Coalhouse Walker, Tateh, and Emma Goldman. And I thought maybe just to get the things rolling, I would start with you, Donna, because while the other characters are archetypical and iconic in many ways, they are maybe composites of some real people, but they are fictional characters. But Emma Goldman did exist in history, and you're playing her. So the first question I have for you is, as an actor, is that intimidating, or is that joyful, or some of both? I mean, how do you approach a character that really lived?
I always enjoy playing someone who is a real life person because it gives you something to go to. You then have to return to the script and play the character the way that it's written in the script. But when I knew that the auditions were coming up, I immediately began researching her because everyone goes, "You're perfect for Emma Goldman," and I don't quite know what that means. But loud, perhaps. But she's a fascinating person. And after I got the role, then I read her autobiography, Living My Life, which you would think for somebody writing an autobiography who lived at the turn of the century, it might be the language might be a little archaic and a little difficult to understand, but she actually wrote extremely well. It's very readable, and she was a very passionate woman. She espoused labor rights, free love, rights for homosexuals, birth control, way out ahead of her time, and just a real gadfly on the rump of the American government. So yeah, she was a charmer.
And you actually had the opportunity to talk to E.L. Doctorow the other night when he came to see the performance. And would you share how Emma Goldman wound up in this show?
Well, we were chatting about, just sort of apropos of nothing, we were having a drink, and he said, I could have put someone who is much more influential in social issues of the era, and he suggested Eugene Debs, who was quite influential, a very important man in the era, but he said he felt Emma was much more interesting. And I would have to agree with him because she was a fascinating person, and she was arrested time and time and time again for her activities. And in fact, like a pregnant woman has their bag to go to the hospital, she had her go to jail bag. And she had a change of underwear and a book to read. So, you've got to love somebody like that expected that whatever she was going to do, she was going to get in trouble for it, and she didn't care. And that's what I like about her.
Thank you. Mano, I was wondering, although your character isn't Samuel Goldwyn per se, or some particular person, obviously there is historical research one could do for this role.
Sure.
And I was just curious what you might have done.
Well, our director, Marcia Milgram Dodge, was extraordinary in the amount of research she started doing even a year before we began rehearsals. And remember the first day of rehearsal, she brought forth these binders with an extraordinary amount of material in there. And there was a book of photographs that documented tenement living in the Lower East Side at the turn of the 19th century, at the turn of the 19th or the 20th? You turn forward or you turn, turn of the 20th, yeah. And that was really vivid to look at the living conditions that, that these people lived in, that somebody like Tateh and his daughter would have lived in. These were 5-floor walk-ups that had, maybe 4 apartments per floor, that had probably 8 people living in a room, and no ventilation, very little lighting, 2 outhouses for the entire building, usually in the back somewhere, very dangerous neighborhoods, and really living on top of each other. And Tateh is very much this, like you say, sort of an archetypical character of the immigrant who comes to the country and with nothing and makes something of himself. And he comes, like a lot of immigrants do, with these very grand dreams and visions of what America is and what the American dream can be. And he very quickly is confronted with the sort of dark underbelly of what the American dream is, and what a free market can bring, and what freedom can be when it's perverted into a lack of responsibility and a lack of compassion for our fellow man. But through his own hard work, and through ingenuity, and through the very American entrepreneurial spirit, and also through the kindness of certain strangers at key moments, he is able to transcend those hardships and makes a success, as he says. That character represents millions upon millions of stories that this country has been built on.
Thank you. Well, you're the next victim. I wanted to ask you, in addition to any research that you might have wanted to do for Coalhouse, this is the 3rd time you're playing this role. You had shared that with me. And so I'm just curious, what's different for you this time? And that might include research you did or didn't do, but it might include other things as well.
Yeah. You're right, it is the 3rd time that I've had a chance, the honor, of playing Coalhouse. And this time, I think what I bring to the character that's completely different than ever before is experience. Not experience necessarily on the stage and in performance life, but just as a man and living and growing. I have a family, I have 3 little boys. And so my 3 little boys mean the world to me. And so that totally infuses and gives a lot to my character, and of course his process now. And not only that, but just the responsibilities, of course, of taking care of a family. Coalhouse is a man full of hopes and full of dreams, and he has many, many hopes and dreams of this family, and a family unit coming together and living out that life, together. And that's something that, of course, I in my own personal life have to deal with and sometimes struggle with and sometimes balance. And it's so the thread is very, very common, and it's very, very real, for me right now. So I think with time and with experience, with age, and with now being a father, it has really, really lifted the stakes. It's up the ante, on what I bring to the role, and makes it much, much more passionate and visceral, for me.
Yeah, thank you. This has been a very special year in Washington with the inauguration of Barack Obama as president. And, here is this very American story about the meaning of success, about intolerance, about racial hatreds, about the fear of xenophobia, the fear of foreigners, right. And, in the immigration issues that we're dealing with now, economic issues that we're dealing with now, for me, the place resonated so much more deeply than ever before, seeing Ford up there on the stage and thinking about what's going on in our auto industry now. And I'm just wondering, for all of you playing this show here in Washington, if, what goes through your minds, if any of those things resonate for you, and if so, how that might affect you.
Well,
Jump in.
It's almost eerie, the number of things in this show that are topical as to what's going on right now. And you brought some of them, and really for me, it's about who's sitting in the White House right now. That's sort of, I think, the obvious one. But I think the less obvious one is what's happened with the economy in the last 9 months. And regardless of your political affiliation, I think it's really clear that in this particular case, a free market left completely to its own devices and unregulated, did not provide us with the best possible solution in the long run. And that's a very cherished American ideal, you know, that individuals should be free to work, and that the pursuit of happiness can be in the work, and that the markets will figure themselves out. So that's a real kind of reckoning that we're going through now, and I think that's something that my character in the first act of the play finds out the hard way himself, and that there is the degree to which we have to emphasize responsibility to each other as being a corollary to individual rights and individual freedoms is something that's very, very much spelled out in this play. You know, I don't think any of the characters in this play get where they are without some compassionate gesture from another human being. You know, and those two things really go hand in hand. I think we're very much in a time and place in our country where that's important.
Yeah, I was just going to add that I believe Ragtime is very, very important and is a great work for this time, specifically for the reasons that Mano was just sharing, because at the ultimate the core, you know, of the message, I know Lynn Ahrens and Stephen Flaherty, the composer and lyricist, really kind of a real common theme for Ragtime is family. You know, for them, unity, it's family. And for me, it's love, which you can't really separate from family as well. So it's individuals in different struggles in different places, all now having common struggles together, no matter what class you're in, no matter what color you are, you know, and recognizing that we are all in this thing together and we do have to move forward toward a common goal. I think the greatest image of Ragtime is the family at the end. That is the single greatest image of the entire musical. When that family comes together and you see a Jewish father, the waspish mother, a little black boy, a child, you know, and then the two children, other children that are there. It is just great. It is beautiful. You know, a true representation of love to me.
And America.
And America, absolutely.
Yes, yes. Donna, anything you'd like to add?
A line that I didn't think about really until we were in front of an audience and we were getting a response to it. The second thing I say in the show as Emma Goldman is right after J.P. Morgan, the huge multi-billionaire financier, and Henry Ford have just introduced themselves. And Emma comes up sort of behind and under them and shouts that she wants to let me at those sons of bitches, and then announces to the audience, these men are the men who are sucking your souls dry. And I never thought about what that meant until I heard the audience laugh in a way that I can only call ironic. It gets this sort of kind of a laugh every night, and I never thought about that. And the fact that history is repeating itself. And again, 100 years later, the action of the show begins in 1906. It's 2009. The more things change, the more they remain the same.
Well, yes and no,
Yeah.
because the flip side is that when you know Coalhouse and Sarah sing "The Wheels of a Dream" and they're talking about their young son and what the kind of America that their young son will grow up in, you know, you cannot hear that song and look at that image and not think of the events of the past 6 months and our neighbor down at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and that is something that I don't think when this musical came out in 1996 or whenever it was, that there are a lot of people you could talk to in 1996 who said there will not be a black president in my lifetime, and that has now been proven wrong. And so that is I think something that we have as a country can be very proud of, and it's also points up how far we still have to go, and that's always the other side of the progress is how much further we still can progress. So
There still may be disbelief.
no doubt.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I wanted to sort of move to more of a professional question, since we have the opportunity to ask three remarkable artists about how you put a show like this together, bit by bit, right? Each of you talks in a particular way that is a reflection of your character, and sometimes that involves accents or dialects. And so I wondered if each of you might talk about your work or work with a dialect coach, or how those ways that your characters speak developed for you as the character developed.
You didn't have to go there, did you? He did not have to attend dialect lessons. Mano and I both did. Our dialect coach, Anita, sat down with us and worked through just sort of the different sounds that people would make. Emma was from Lithuania. Her family moved to Prussia when she was about 7 years old, and then moved back into Russia. And so what you're trying to give is a flavor rather than an accurate accent, because quite possibly an accurate accent would be unintelligible to an American ear. And so you do certain sounds, like you change a W, so instead of saying water, you might say water. And R's are tapped on the top of your palate, so you say Russian. So we learned to do those things. And then for Emma, because she's a public speaker, I felt like I just needed like a touch of that when she's addressing the public. When she's speaking to Tateh, she speaks in her accent is a little more forward then. So that's how I did it. What about you?
I had just come from playing a Czech guy in rock and roll, playing Jan, and so I kind of just massaged that accent a little bit eastward and northward to Latvia. But the thing I wanted to avoid was a kind of excessive caricatured Yiddish Jewishness. I didn't want him to be Tevye. And because it's enough already with the beard and the success, and you just have to, and and I think but I think it's also like it's a testament to the Obama generation and era that a guy with a Latino name can play like the Yiddish Jewish guy in a musical, and that's the way things should be,
Absolutely.
So I wanted to just make sure that, as Donna said, that you're understood first of all. And secondly, in Act 2, when he has assimilated a little more and he's sort of reinvented himself as this kind of fantastical character, that the accent is a little less thick, but it also has a considerably more flair to it. There's a sort of self-conscious stylizing of your own language there.
Thank you.
There is a minor adjustment in Coalhouse as well. The difference is, and even it even also goes for me today personally. When Coalhouse is in Harlem and he's talking to his people in Harlem, it's a different edge than when he's in New Rochelle talking to the white family. So when he goes to present himself to mother, to father, he says, "Mother, father, I'm looking for Sarah."
Right.
But when he's in Harlem, he says, "In Harlem,"
Right.
where he's dropping off the M. So there's some things, letters, and Anita did work with me on that as well. Just finding little nuances, not too strong, but some different places along the script that we could change it up a little bit to show his comfortability with his own people. And then, of course, just a higher crust when he's with, the white family.
But there was one tiny little thing that I do in my scene with her is that Tateh I likes to discover new American phrases, sort of colloquial phrases. So, things like "you are barking up the wrong tree," I very much try to, delight in how pleasurable it is to say that with a sort of exaggerated American R, a lot of rhoticism for those of you out there who are going to study dialects. That's R coloring in your voice. "You are barking up the wrong tree," it's this sort of exaggerated thing.
Love that.
Which is, him having fun with his sort of new language that he's adopting.
Well, thank you, actually, because that was where I hoped the question would go. Because we tend to think of, when we think of an actor creating a role, what's the walk going to be like? Where's the character center? That sort of thing. But how we sound is as much revealing, and especially when you're dealing with a show that's looking at different groups from different parts of the country and different parts of the world coming up against each other, that affects them. So I think that it's interesting to hear you talk about that. And I wanted to also ask you, because obviously you are quite a musician and a wonderful singer, but I don't know how your piano skills are. Unfortunately, I thought you played the piano brilliantly the other night.
He's very accurate.
But it does,
Top.
for those of you that have seen the
Thank
show
you.
already,
that.
the design, the visual design is quite wonderful. And the piano, I won't, spoiler alert, the piano isn't a real piano. And even if it were, the chances are you wouldn't be necessarily playing it, or you might be. But I was just wondering what you did, because you opened the show.
Yes,
you know.
yes. A lot of coaching time. No, I am not a pianist. Never have been. I always want to, though, one day. We're going to get it. Mano's going to teach me. But what I did was, during rehearsals, and remember, this is the third time, and so each time I'd always taken time to just watch the piano players in the rehearsal room just go through everything, and sometimes they would sit with me and teach me what to play. And if you actually heard it, if the strings were attached, not saying that has anything to do with our production, it would probably be horrible. But it looked good.
It looks wonderful,
Yeah.
that stride piano
Yes.
style. I mean, and it's just completely coordinated with the sound. So I thought that was really great.
Which is very cool because it's very connected to what Donna just spoke of about kind of a flavor of. Because different music for different eras are very stylized, even in the way that they're played, and ragtime is supremely stylized. So if you get the flavor of the style and the look, then you're gonna kind of be accurate, So it's a style.
Yeah, that's great. I guess I wanted to ask one other question just about the way you approach the roles, because these characters are larger than life in many ways, and in addition, they're in a musical, so they sing and dance at certain times. And yet, as you, all three of you, make us care so much about them and feel so deeply about them. I certainly, I'm very familiar with this material, but cried a number of times when I saw the production. How do you, each of you as actors, approach the challenge of keeping it real and keeping it sung and keeping it danced and et cetera, like sort of integrating all of those things together?
My situation's a little bit different from Mano and Q because I also feel ensemble. When I'm not being Emma Goldman, I'm also being somebody in New Rochelle or somebody in Atlantic City. And so for me, I sort of have to make that work in my own head. I can't just play the one character all night long. So when I come back to playing Emma, say after I've done the Atlantic City, where it's all very stylized because we're in a movie, and the character's very pretty, wearing a big hat, and then I go to Emma, who kind of stumps around, and it's a physicality for me more than anything, that all my characters have a different physicality. The lady in Atlantic City is up on her toes and very light with her hands, where Emma's hands are knotted up into fists a lot of the time. She bangs on things, she walks heavy. So that helps me get into sort of the interior of the character, that because Emma's so passionate and so revved up all the time, that I have to find other ways to make the other characters different so I don't lose her. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You're asking, how do we keep it fresh?
Now, also, how do you, there's certain plays where it's just in dialogue and it seems very, quote, naturalistic, unquote. In a musical, you're doing things in another realm, and yet these characters also have to be
It feels-
real and grounded.
It feels totally naturalistic to me, because I don't think singing is any less naturalistic than speaking. It just happens to be on pitch, and I think that's actually a really important thing to keep in mind. You're still trying to communicate something just as the way you would if you were speaking to someone. And I think a danger in musicals is when performers start to listen to themselves and how pretty they sound, and they lose track of the actual lyric that it is that they're trying to convey. The lyric is the most important thing. That's what makes us not opera. In opera, the music is the most important thing. In musical theater, the lyric is the most important thing. Because you're advancing, in a well-written musical, you are advancing the plot, hopefully, with every song. And by the end of the song, the story has advanced the characters in a different place than they were at the beginning. So, and I just think you just have to infuse it with, and again, in a good musical, people begin singing when the size of their emotion or the size of their need, is a better way to put it, becomes so big that spoken words are not enough anymore. And so you really just have to invest whatever that need is with the appropriate size and the appropriate scale. And this is a huge musical with huge characters, with huge journeys and needs and desires, and it's a big, beautiful theater with a big, beautiful orchestra, so it's really about rising to the occasion every time, and I think that's about letting it carry you and staying relaxed within your instrument and knowing that you are just one part of a very complicated puzzle, and that there are a lot of other things to rely on to help you with the storytelling, your fellow actors on stage, the other characters in the scene, the words and music that you've been given, the costumes that you're wearing, which for me is a huge, that's half the battle between the transformation between Act 1 and Act 2, this giant beard and 18 layers and sweating in dirty wool, to a very svelte, bright, clean, immaculate suit. I mean, that's half the job right there. And then just trusting that you know what you're doing, and you know, if you get out of the way, the story will tell itself and the character will come out.
Great, thank you. Anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'll be the first to admit that I am not a fan of pretty singing. If you're connected to intention and telling the truth, if it comes out cracked, it's cracked, but it's real. You know, I will never put a pretty voice or pretty singing before the story that I'm trying to tell. A perfect example of what Mano was saying for me personally is in the show, many of us know the song Make Them Hear You. Or Make Them Hear You is one of the final climactic songs of Ragtime. And there's this big, long note that he holds out at the end of the song. Now, a lot of times, and I've seen performers before, when they sing long, major, climactic notes, it's disconnected. They disconnect and just sing a note. And that's not truly what it is. If you stay connected to the lyric, about the lyric, like Mano was explaining, that lyric, the way it's hold out and why it's hold out has a supreme purpose. And so for me in that song, the entire song, I'm rallying my troops, telling them something. I'm giving them some information, not to give away the show, but I'm telling them I need them to do something. And then that note singing at the end of the song is just showing them how to do it. Mm-hmm. So watch, and this is how you do it. This is what I want you to do. Now I'm showing you how to do it. And so there's always a connected purpose, you know, which is why I love musicals, you know, why I love musical theater. So yes.
Great, thank you. Those are wonderful answers. I guess the last question that I'd like to ask before I open it up for all of you to get a chance to ask some questions is to reach the level of performance that each of you has reached. Takes a lot of work, it's a long journey, and I'm just curious if each of you might share, because there might be, is there anybody out in the audience that would like to take that journey too, that's interested in performing? Raise your hands. Okay.
Wow.
Yes,
Nice to see that.
yes.
So what might you share with these hopeful people about you know, something that was really important for you on your journeys, a lesson you learned, something that helped you to get where you're standing now on the stage of the Kennedy Center?
Yes. I'll say, for me, I always attribute the measure of my success, any successes that come along in my life, to two things. That's loving people and giving. Loving people and giving. From the time that I was in the 7th grade is when I kind of started acting in school and got bit by the bug and wanted to be an actor in the 7th grade. And from that point till today, I've never stopped donating my time and my gift. I learned through my teachers who were instrumental to me, and I stand on their shoulders even here at the Kennedy Center, learning the importance of giving. Now, a lot of people may not see the correlations between giving and this great art that we do, but you'll find out as you go along. Mm-hmm. But as you work, use your art to give to people. I believe this art is created for humanity, for us, for all of us. And the minute that you become selfish or self-indulgent about your work and your art, you're going to diminish. You may have all the money in the world and be on the biggest stages, and you're still going to be dissatisfied, you know, with the work that you do. So continue to give. Get involved in community projects. Get involved with the less fortunate. Anytime anyone mentions to you a word of, oh, I want to do that one day, spend 5 minutes with them sharing. Get involved, like I said, mostly in your community, and start right where you are. And one other thing that's important for all of us who are aspiring, whatever you have in your hands right now, mm-hmm. whether it's your school, whether it's your high school teacher, whatever is in your hands right now, work well with that. Use everything you have and exhaust everything you can with what you have right now. Keep your eyes open, listen, learn discipline, learn how to respect others, your teachers, your fellow cast members in shows, other students. Respect one another, and this is something that I really believe as well. As you come into performing arts centers and venues and different theaters, learn how to treat everyone with the same level of love, from the president of the building all the way down to the janitor, I won't even say down to, up to the janitor of the building, to everyone who works in security out front, to everyone who opens a door for you, everyone who buttons your collar. It's supremely important. It's supremely important to love and respect everybody, because everybody is watching you. And you'll be surprised that the very same people that you may dismiss thinking that they're insignificant are the people who can open many doors for you and further your art and your benefit for the future. So always respect everyone around you in this business, and not just this business, but all life. And it elevates you to be a better human being.
Absolutely. Here, here.
Thank you. Anything?
It's hard to top that. I just have to hit on the learning. I will turn 53 the final weekend of this run, and I've been doing this for a long time, and you never, ever stop learning in this business. Someone always has something new to show you, even if it's one of the children in the show. I watch the child who plays the little boy, Christopher Cox, every performance. There's a moment in where I'm standing above him on one of the levels and I can watch him, and there is such genuine joy in what he does, and such freshness and innocence in what he does. And it's nice to know that you can watch that and appreciate what an 11-year-old child is doing on the stage, and then look at someone that, you know, is older than you, and there are not too many in this cast, and learn from what they know. So you just sort of have to keep all your pores, your eyes, your ears, everything open, so that you can bring it all in and learn from it, because what we do in this business is based on what's all around us every day, every minute. And don't ever shut yourself off and decide that something is just not important enough for you to deal with. Yes, it is. It's all grist to the mill. You can use everything in your life in this business.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And I think that, I mean, sort of to combine what Q was saying about generosity and love, and what Donna was saying about learning, I had an experience in this production in our, I guess, second week of rehearsal, second or third, where I was the beneficiary of some extraordinary generosity on the part of two different actors in Ragtime. One is Jonathan Hammond, who plays Houdini, and who actually has played Tateh, my role, on 3 separate occasions in 3 other productions. So I went to him at one point after I had gotten my own sort of feet wet in the part and gotten my own ideas and felt fairly secure in my choices and my interpretations. And I did something that I haven't really ever done before, which is I asked another actor who obviously had an extensive amount of experience playing a part that I was playing. I said, if you had 3 insights to give me about this character, which you feel like might be helpful to me, and you can give them to me in a constructive way, I'd be very grateful for that. And he was enormously gracious in pointing out 3 specific key moments in the show that he thought were important and that currently were maybe being a little overlooked or underdeveloped. And it was a real act of generosity. I mean, he didn't have to do that. He could have, you know, people always think, oh, actors are selfish and competitive and we're always wanting to cut each other down and get out of my way, and, you know. And it was literally the polar opposite of that. And I owe, you know, a lot of what I found in my particular embodiment of Tateh to Jonathan, and him being so generous about that. And Christiane Knoll, who plays Mother, did a very similar thing for me in terms of my vocal technique, because I don't have that much experience in terms of vocal training as a singer. And I was starting to hurt myself a little bit singing-wise, because I felt like my voice was too pop and I had to sound more legit. And, you know, Ron Boehmer comes out and has this enormous Phantom of the Opera voice, and, you know, and he sings Journey On, and it's this huge thing. And then I feel like, oh, I got to top that. And I, you know, just even subconsciously, you're not even doing it. And she just gave me a couple and another woman, Sumaya Ali, in our cast, gave me some very specific key pointers about placement, that completely changed my show and completely changed my ability to navigate it comfortably, and gave me a new instrument, and again, free of charge. It's like so that kind of generosity is something that really separates the professionals from the amateurs. I think the people who are in this business longest are the ones who realize that you never stop learning, and the ones who realize that if you are good to those around you, you'll get it back.
Yeah.
Thank you. Those are really wonderful answers, and I hope that people who are thinking of going into this field listened well, because I couldn't think of 3 better things to say. So now it's your turn. Please.
Would there be one person in each of your lives who influenced you the most, or when you had that moment where you said, because of this person, this is what I want to do?
Yes. For me, you just asking that question almost makes me cry, and I might now. His name is Paul Hughes, and I've always said one day that when I win my first Tony or Oscar, I want to walk up to the mic, and I don't want to say anything to the people but thank you. And then I'm going to move out of the way and let him speak, because I believe that if it had not been for him, I wouldn't be here. And I'm also getting a chance to live out and do the things that he never got a chance to do. And so everything I do, when I talked about respect and loving people, I do it with him in mind, because that's the way he taught me, and there's no other way that I, know how to do this art.
And
other
who
than through.
was he?
His name is Paul Hughes. He was my high school teacher, my high school theater teacher, I'm sorry, thank you. He was my high school theater teacher, and I owe him
Are there
so
any high
much.
school theater teachers in here?
Yay!
Bravo.
Yeah.
I only if I am allowed to somehow merge my mother and my father into one person would I be able to answer that, because I would never want to have to pick between the two of them, but absolutely the biggest influences in my life.
Same for me. My mother and father, particularly my mother, who is 88 years old and is coming up from Tennessee to see the show this Friday.
Oh,
She hasn't been up to
wonderful.
see a show I've been in 3 years. So I said, Mama, you've got to see this one. So, and she doesn't know it at all. So I have refused to tell her anything about it, just that I'm loud.
Well, I kept writing down stuff, so I'll just
Sweet.
choose one. I guess one of my favorites is because our school recently did Dreamgirls, so this one's directed at you. I was wondering what your character was and what your favorite song was.
My character was Marty. I played Marty. You're Marty? All right. I loved it. I loved it because I'm typically singing in musicals, and that was one of the chances I got to perform professionally and not sing, so it was cool. So I played Marty, and then my favorite song in Dreamgirls probably is the One Night Only that Effie sings at the end when she comes back. Yeah.
Thank you.
This is directed to any of you and hopefully all of you. I plan on pursuing
What?
I think they
It's a
were
good
just there
question.
Yeah.
for.
I plan on pursuing a career in professional, theater and acting and film and all that and stuff. And something that's come across me now being a senior in high school is looking for the right education for that. And I was just wondering, in general, how the education that you got at any schools and what you study, how that really affected you and stuff. Because being right now in the economic times, it's very hard to get that education you want without getting slammed by a very large tuition or something. And I was just wondering what your views are individually on an education into the performing arts, which can be a risky life decision.
Well, I'll tell you that I do not have any background in, I do not have a theater degree. I went to school and studied journalism, and I never intended to do this. When I found out people would pay me for it, then I started doing it. Now, I'd always done it. You don't have to go to school and study theater and get a degree to do this, and I'm living proof.
And in fact, don't. I'll tell you why.
Yeah, you can get the tools you need to do this without going to college for it. You can getting another degree. It's all about staying open to what's happening and watching what's going on around you and learning from it. But, so I can't address where you should go to school.
This is very important to me. I didn't major in theater. I was not even an actor in undergrad. I came to this very, very late. And while I have some regrets about some time lost earlier on, I'm enormously thankful for the fact that I got as well-rounded and broad-based an education, a liberal arts education, as you could possibly get. Because being an actor is the only profession in the world in which every single thing that makes up who you are, every experience that you will ever have, every relationship you've ever had, every quirk about your personality, your body, everything is going to be useful to you at some point in the service of some particular role.
Exactly.
That's the only profession in the world. You know, other arts are too specialized, but what we do is we embody the entirety of humanity. We play gods, we play insects, we play Jewish immigrant, you know, you have to be able to do all of that. And so the more widely read you are, the more experience you have with different cultures, the more countries you have traveled to, the more people of different walks of life you have encountered and worked with. All of those things are so much more important, and you can find that in the great works of literature, in the great works of music, in the great works of art. Go to concerts, go to museums, go to the ballet, go to modern dance, experience all of these other art forms. That is going to be so much more important to you. I don't even really go to the theater that much, right? I do it for a living. I don't go to the theater that much. I go hear music, or I go to the galleries, or I go see something else. That's going to inform my character just as much as seeing some actor on the stage. And the corollary to that is if you want to go into musical theater, don't listen to cast recordings. I know this sounds like a what? No, how? There are students who go to certain colleges and certain training institutions in this country where I feel like they sit for 4 years and listen to the original cast recording of a particular musical and then come out of that school only being able to sing a song from that musical exactly the way it is on that particular cast album, having brought absolutely none of their own personality, their own quirk, their own originality to it. And that's what you want to do. Now, because I'm completely ignorant about a lot of musicals, I didn't see Ragtime, I didn't even hear the score until we had our first run through where everybody sang it, and I said, wow, there's some good songs in this show. I read the script, and I thought it was a good script, and I thought the character was interesting, and when I got the offer, I said, yes, I want to do this, and this will be an interesting experience. But I had no idea how any of the songs that I sing in the show were supposed to be sung, because I didn't listen to the recording. And at every step in my career, that has been nothing but helpful. When I did Toby and Sweeney Todd on Broadway, people said to me, God, I've never heard Not While I'm Around sung that way, you know, what you did at the end, and blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, I hadn't either. And so I wasn't, but literally I was able to bring my particular stamp to it. And that's what each of you in this room who wants to be an actor has to be willing to do. You know, you have to know that what you carry inside yourself is more than enough to fulfill the demands of any of the characters that you have to play if you are willing to be brave enough and you are willing to be disciplined enough to dig deep down inside yourself and figure out what it is inside you that is going to make this character and your particular take on this character unique. So, sorry for babbling at you here like that, but that's very, very important. And I think there are dangers in trying to imitate other people that have been out there. Or when cast lists go up at your high school or whatever, and you say, oh, I'm so wrong for that part, and that's, no, you're never wrong for the part, okay? You don't choose the part picks you. And rather than thinking, I should be playing this one, I could never play this part, think about how you can make this part more original and more interesting than anybody else who's ever played it. And I've seen plays, I saw a Tennessee Williams one act where, as usual in Tennessee Williams, the woman babbles on and on about this and that, and sort of dream-like poetic language. And the guy sits there not really doing anything, and he was a maintenance man in the play. And he just sat there listening to this batty old Southern lady go on and on and on. And he was infinitely more compelling sitting there listening to her in the simplest ways than she was in everything she had to say. So no small parts, only small actors.
Yes.
Okay.
Do you have
Thank you
anything
very
you'd like
much.
to add?
No.
We just saved him a lot of money.
Right.
I'm not going to college.
Beg your pardon?
Can I just, I just wanted to.
Yeah, I wrote a good college essay. Trust me, I know.
I just wanted to say, as an educator, a theater professional who's also an educator at a university, I couldn't agree with you more. I teach theater in a liberal arts setting, but the point is, this is not a commercial for my university. It's endorsing this, what you're saying, which isn't, I mean, I hope you all listened really carefully, because Mano isn't saying don't educate yourself.
No.
And don't be an educated person, and don't understand how to critically think and the creative process, and don't, if you're going to be a singer, learn how to sing, or if you're going to be a dancer, learn how to use your body. But what he is saying is to be really open to the education process. And I was at an event once with filmmakers, and someone was talking about a film that she was working on, and how Spielberg and Scorsese and all these really wonderful filmmakers were all going to film school at the same time, but they had stories they wanted to tell. And that was the important thing. But a lot of the people that they were in film school with, they didn't have any stories. All they knew how to do was make movies. So they wound up making a lot of movies about making movies, which have limited appeal. I mean, if you think about a show like Ragtime, it's about history, it's about political science, it's about economics, it's about love. It's about all of these things. So anyway, I just wanted to say
Yeah, I
that
mean-
I'm endorsing you 100%.
Listen, I got an MFA from NYU, and I'm still in student loan debt paying that off, and will be for many, many years to come, unless, Steven Spielberg calls. And it is still going to have been worth every single penny, because it not only changed who I am as an actor in terms of giving me technical facilities that I didn't have beforehand that allow me to do things like classical theater and Shakespeare that I wasn't able to do before. But it changed who I am as a human being, because it forced me to know myself in all aspects of myself in ways that I hadn't had to beforehand. And you really can't be, I think, a truly honest and vulnerable presence on stage without a really strong grasp of who you are as a person and knowledge of self. And Q is going, can I tell them this? Q is going to get his MFA
Right.
starting in the fall, which I heartily endorse, so that someday we can star in Othello together as Othello and Iago.
All right. I'd like to
my
come to
dream,
that
so.
production. Yes, sir.
All right, well, I think acting is something very beautiful and remarkable, but it's something I have very, very, very little experience in. And what I was wondering was, is there a point where you aren't yourselves anymore, where you actually do feel like, once you know enough about the character, do you actually, in the moment, do you not feel like yourself anymore? Are you Tateh, or are you Emma, or is that how it is for you, or is it you doing your best to act like the character?
For me, honestly, I struggle with that all the time. And that's one of the big reasons why I do want to go to school. My undergraduate training wasn't the best, and actually it probably could have been, but I didn't apply myself. I was too much in the fraternities and all kind of other stuff in college. But now that I have been working professionally, I see that I'm limited. I see that within me there's so much more, and I respect this craft too much to get up there every night and still struggle in the same areas, And so I'm so desperate to go back to school. So to honestly answer your question, yeah, every night there are things that I go through on stage and I'm like, okay, stay connected, or just, okay, be free, warm up, get this thing right. And I struggle with the process a lot of times. So I am going back to school to learn some more tools so that I can unlock those doors to be more free, to be more truthful, and be true to the story a little bit more. So that's something I still struggle with. Yeah, where I still see me, and I'm still in me.
I have to the late, great Robert Prosky, who was an actor who did a lot of work here and in movies and television as well, gave a wonderful speech years ago about the actor's state of not knowing, and how that very part of our existence, that we're never completely sure of what we're doing, feeds into are what we do. I wish I had the speech in front of me because it was gorgeous, and it really addressed all the insecurities that you always feel that'll never go away. MFA aside, they never go away. All the shows that you ever do, you're always going to have those times of doubt. Sometimes they'll be in rehearsal, sometimes they're going to be when you're standing in the wings, sometimes they're going to be in the middle of a speech. I had just a minor hiccup the other night. The very last speech I had, my brain went for a second, and I had to take a breath and pause and then move on. And I turned away from, it was in the final speech there, I have to say, the signs of the coming world war were everywhere. The anarchist Emma Goldman, and go on from there. Well, I have another speech earlier in the show where I say the radical anarchist Emma Goldman. Well, I had a brain fart. And I went, the anarchist, I just had to take that moment. And I turned away and it's like, you're stupid. But it keeps you humble. You know, as long as you're still capable of feeling humility, you can still do this. So I don't know if that answers your question at all, but you know,
I think
you're never going to be totally sure all the time. And there are going to be times where you feel like, yes, today I am Emma Goldman. And then Emma Goldman leaves you 3 seconds later and you're just you again.
and I would say, and I would say, what's really important about that, though, is that if Emma Goldman leaves you 3 seconds later, that's okay. All right. And the worst thing you can do is beat yourself up and then try to squeeze Emma Goldman back into you and oh, yesterday I cried for real and it was a real tear, and today I can't. This is a young actor thing all the time, right? So you cry for the first time on stage and you feel so good about yourself, like a real actor, and you pat yourself on the back for, you know.
I can cry on cue.
And, yeah, exactly. And what, you know, the real craft of acting, and that's why it's called acting, is this continual balancing act between who I am, Mano, as an actor, wearing a costume and a fake beard, going through a predetermined set of motions and lines on a stage that has been rehearsed, and Tateh, a Latvian Jewish immigrant at the turn of the century, who doesn't know where he's going and doesn't know what he's about to say and is living life moment to moment to moment. It's that ongoing. Now, at its best, you want to get to 90% Tateh, 10% Mano, because if it's 100% Tateh, he might walk off the edge of the stage and into the pit, and, you know, or be like, what is this funny microphone doing on my forehead, or you know, and so you know, and that's really and that just as long as you stay on target, you know, to use my old Star Wars metaphor, stay on target, stay on target. You want to stay always focused on what the task is at hand, and the task at hand almost never has to do with you. It has to do with the other person on stage. The other person on stage is always more important than you are. Because you almost always, in every single scene, he needs something from Sarah, she needs something from Tateh. Tateh needs to sell his picture to the customer, he needs his little girl to feel better. It's always him. You make the other person on stage more important, and then they in turn do that to you, and you get the ball bouncing back and forth that I'm sure your wonderful acting teacher in the back has done with you in class. And that keeps you relaxed, and it takes the onus off of you of having to do everything myself. And that makes your body tense, and when your body is tense, you're unexpressive, and when you're unexpressive, you're working really hard, and then the audience has to work really hard because they see you're working really hard. And they don't want to work hard. They want it to be easy. Does that make sense? Okay.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay. So I know getting into character before you hit the stage, or getting that mindset, is very important to me before I get on stage. I wanted to know if it was important to you, and if you have any techniques whatsoever to help you get into that mindset of the character before you actually have to perform in front of dozens of people.
Dozens.
Or
Hundreds
thousands.
even.
I think, by the way, forgive me, just so that they have time to rest, we're not going to be able to take all of these questions. I think that the young woman who was waiting up here, we'll take her question, and
she's
the
back
rest
for
are going to
seconds.
have to, I'm sorry, but just because we're reaching that magic hour.
Yeah.
But anyway, continue.
that was
So-
my question.
Okay.
How do we prep?
Yes.
For me, I need to be at the theater early because I need the time to just be in the space. And it isn't about some huge warm-up that I'm doing or anything like that. My warm-up, vocal warm-up is,
Yeah.
and I'm ready. That's it. I don't have to sing pretty in this show. I don't have big notes or anything. In fact, I spend a lot of my time on stage making ugly sounds. And that's important for this character, that she isn't about pretty. But I need to be in the space. I need to be with my fellow actors. I need to not be rushed. When I'm getting ready to go on for Emma's big scene where she does all of her talking, I run through the lines. You never get too old to forget the lines.
That's for sure.
I run through the lines. I just try to sort of get myself up. And I do my little Jack Lord warm-up. You're all too young to know who Jack Lord was. Yeah, Hawaii Five-0. I went to school at the University of Hawaii. Everybody who worked there in theater had done Hawaii Five-0 at one time or another. And Jack Lord was the star of Hawaii Five-0, and he was this very intense guy. And when he was getting ready to do a scene, because he almost never joked or smiled or anything like that, and his character, he would go off by himself, and he would bash his fists together like this. And weirdly, try it sometime, it brings energy into your upper body. And sometimes when I'm feeling very low energy, I'll go off my corner and do my Jack Lord warm-up. And that works for me. It may not work for Q, it may not work for Mono, but it works for me, and it makes me smile. So, and it relaxes me. You know, it's like, okay, I can do this. Jack Lord can do it, I can do it. So, you know, whatever works, works. I mean, that sounds really simplistic, but you have to find what works for you. And what works in one show may not work for the next show. You may have a different mindset that you have to go to. So it's just trial and error, baby.
I would say just put yourself in as relaxed a place as you can and think about the very first thing that you have to do or say on stage and who that person is going to be directed at, even if they're not on stage. That's all you have to do. Because if you put your body is your instrument, right? So take care of it, right? Put your body in a place where it is relaxed and it will be open to receive whatever needs to come in that can then be transformed and come back out. It's really simple. It doesn't have to be, you psyching yourself into this place and all this, you know. I played a guy in a straitjacket in Sweeney Todd. I mean, the curtain went up and I'm in a straitjacket like this and people would say like, God, you're so intense. What do you do to prepare before? I put my makeup on, I put my costume on, I go down stage, I get in the straitjacket, I goof off with Patti LuPone, and then the curtain goes up and I sing the line. And because of the makeup and the costume and the lighting and what I've been, you know, given to do, I don't have to do any more than that. So it's often simpler than you think, you know.
Yeah, for me, I just want to make sure that my body is ready, meaning that I just want to be loose and relaxed. Like Mano and Donna just said, I come to the theater a little early because I don't want to be rushed either. That's one of the worst things for me. If it's time to go and I'm just rushing at the last minute, put on the microphone, you know, as long as I take my time to put on my mic, I just may want to put on my mic and then just sit for a while.
Yeah.
And then go brush my teeth, and then sit for a while. You know, so as long as I can do that, and then other than that, I like to just get my body warm and loose. So I do, I jump rope. I jump rope, just a full body, just get loose, you know, work it out. I stretch a little bit, only because I just feel like, because of my musculature, I'm strong and it gets tight a lot. So I just try to loosen out. And then once I'm loose, I feel like you're just ready to pop, you know, all the time. So I'm good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And our last question.
I want to thank you for being so patient.
And thank you for
no,
being so
Thank
patient.
you.
No, really, I've learned a lot, and it's a great experience. This is awesome. But I have one question. I know for me, there's always that one song or one scene in a show that really triggers me emotionally and helps me define what the show is all about. And I was wondering what that specific scene or song that is for you to define Ragtime the musical.
Mine is new music. New music to me is, it's so gorgeous, so beautiful. Not just the sound of it, but just what it means. You know, even from Father's first line of new music, where have I been? How did this change, or we change? I mean, that he begins a whole arc of what's about to happen in the play. And then specifically for Coalhouse, why I love it so much, is that's the time that he finds Sarah, that he sees her for the first time again. I mean, he's waited for so long, and he's been trying for so long to get to her, to come back to her, and it's in new music, in that song, the chords of that beautiful melody that he finds her again. So for me, emotionally, that fills me every night. I just think about it and it fills me up. You know, all of us want something so bad in our lives. You want something, and then the moment that you actually get it, when you work for years for something, or whatever it is, for weeks, or whatever your projects or what have you, and you see it come to fruition, that's the moment of new music.
For me, it's not a song or a line or anything. It's actually when I put my hand down by my side and I reach out for it, and just wonderful actress Sarah Rosenthal, who plays my daughter, just reaches her hand out and takes my hand, and feeling that hand hold at the very beginning of the show, and then every single instance throughout the rest of it, right before we go on for a scene, if we're exiting, I hold her hand almost the entire show. And that is the distilled essence of what Tateh's purpose in life is in this play. Why he does everything is because of that girl. So it's that physical connection, and I'm not a father, so I don't know what that's like. I mean, this is the first time I've ever played a father, and it's very, very powerful to have this, small human being that's in your charge. And I understand now why, parents do extraordinary things for their kids, and that feeds an enormous amount. And wherever I am, I don't even know where she is. Sometimes I just put out my hand and she grabs it. It's very moving.
My moment is not something that's in the script, like Mano. There's a scene in the show where Emma addresses, it's called The Night That Goldman Spoke, and it's where she addresses the people in Union Square, and she's shouting at them and exhorting them to support these strikers, and then it turns into the strike itself. And I have to run down the stairs and break through the group and basically get into a policeman's face, militiaman's face, who then takes his rifle butt and hits me in the stomach, and I fall, and then get back up again. And to me, the getting back up again is what Emma Goldman was all about, because she was just not physically and emotionally beat up her whole life for what she believed in. And the getting back up, to me, is what she's about. I get back up, and I'm exhorting everyone to hold firm, hold firm, hold firm, as we're all being pushed off the stage by the militia. And that defines my character to me.
That was a wonderful last question. Thank you
Yes,
so
it
much.
was.
I just wanted to say one final word, if I may. I did have the joy of seeing this performance on Saturday night, and you all were so remarkable. The show is wonderful, but you gave such beautiful performances and seemed so real and honest, but also larger than life, that I know Donna from having seen her work before, but had I not known you and having met you both for the first time, I thought you all were like so much taller, so much, because you just
older.
Yeah, so much older, I said, that's right, because you just filled that space, and it's really joyful to be with you, and I thought you all played your part beautifully, asking really wonderful questions. So thank you all very, very much. Thank you.